I want to give a rap to Lucy Zelić, the highly respected football journalist, is on a mission to protect women's sport. And this is something that a lot of people in the media are too afraid to speak up about because they're worried about a backlash. But Lucy's put that to one side. She's entered the debate around transgender athletes in women's sport. And like us, she's taken an interest in the Flying Bats. This is the female soccer team in Sydney, which has 5 male-born players. And the Flying Bats don't just win matches, they dominate. They've won the grand final this year in the pre-season tournament. They beat the Macquarie Dragons 4-0. They beat Thirroul 5-1. 2 weeks ago, the Flying Bats beat Beecroft 12-0. There was another match where they won 10-0 and a male-born player scored 6 of the goals. As one female competitor told us the other day, no one signed up for this. This is women's football. Lucy Zelić, the highly respected soccer journalist, is on the line right now. Lucy, hello.
Hello, Ben. Great to talk to you, and thank you first and foremost for being such a staunch advocate in this space. It's very, very important right now.
It's very important. I've got to say, I was very impressed and a little bit surprised, Lucy, when you got involved. I don't know a lot about you. I mean, I've watched you and respected your work on the television for a long, long time, but there are just so many people with a public profile who might say this stuff privately, but publicly they think, oh, no, I don't want to get involved.
And that's the biggest frustration right now, Ben, is that the majority of people who I am speaking to are all saying, Lucy, we agree with you entirely. We support your view on this. But unfortunately, we can't come out and speak about this publicly. And, my retort to them, Ben, has always been, why can't you come out and speak about this publicly? And a lot of the problems that we're facing now, Ben, is that this type of ideology has infiltrated institutions like the media, forms and arms of government, the law, the education system, academia. It's a real problem because people are fearing for their livelihood. They're ultimately fearing the backlash. But from my perspective, I think I've certainly put that to one side, and predominantly because, like you, I'm a parent. You've got 2 beautiful girls. I've got a daughter who I'm releasing into the education system soon. And it dawned on me one day when I saw the story break, and not too long ago, I believe it was the 28th of March, where they started talking about the fact that the North Western Sydney Football Association convened, and audio was leaked from that where you've got presidents basically confessing that they're very concerned for the safety and the well-being of their players, and that this is becoming an issue that they can't ignore. And I was at the park with my kids, Ben, and I turned to my husband and I said, I can't ignore this anymore. Not only is this a long-held belief of mine that I don't believe that transgender but male-born athletes should be able to compete against women, but it's also now a real problem that we're not having enough people speak out about this. And I felt very comforted by the fact that not only do I believe in my views, but that also this has to be something now where we have to enforce legislative change to be able to protect women and girls in sport. So this is why I wanted to come out publicly, and what I want to say to the people that sort of have expressed any kind of hatred or derogatory terminology that they have spewed forth at me, I don't fear you. I don't worry about this cancel culture. I don't worry about being labelled anything, because ultimately when you stand on the right side of history, and I can very comfortably say that this is the right side of history, you have nothing to fear. And I do know that this is the view of the majority. It's just about now how we convert the views of the majority into the mainstream now.
If we're in a large room with 2GB listeners at the moment, they'd be giving you a standing ovation. You are so strong, and I love that. I don't fear you. I don't care about your cancel culture. Can you tell me, you've commentated and covered thousands of games. So from a football point of view, why is it an unfair advantage? And I know that this is pretty obvious to most of us, but for the uneducated, why is it an unfair advantage having people born male competing in an all-women's competition?
Because we know, first and foremost, Ben, that biological differences exist between men and women. And you don't have to be a sports scientist or a doctor to acknowledge that in the first instance. Women have always been placed, when it comes to any type of sporting advantage, in the disadvantaged category. You only have to stretch back to history to realise that women have been advocating for more than just their rights in sport, but just their rights to exist and to vote. And that's underscored by the suffragette movement, which stretches back to over 100 years ago. Women only started competing in the Olympics as of the 1900s, and they were in very, very limited categories. I believe that it was about only 7 or 8 at the time. So this is something where women are always having to play catch-up. They're always having to fight for equal pay. They're always having to fight for any types of, sponsorship disbursements. They're having to fight for television rights and for those disbursements to be fair and equitable among this. I mean, we only have to look at the success of the Matildas at the World Cup last year and the fascination and the love and adoration that the public had for this team. And they're our best chance, actually, at creating any type of success at a World Cup, let's be honest. So, they've always been placed at a disadvantage biologically, and they've always been placed at a disadvantage in terms of monetary value as well. So, we only also have to look at really what's occurring on a football field. And when we start to look at this through the lens of biology, I think that Dr. Ross Tucker is a fantastic sports scientist. If anyone isn't familiar with his work, please do go and have a look at him, particularly on Twitter, where he's put together a really fascinating thread on testosterone. And I think that a lot of people have become very fixated on this idea, and that we potentially should be even pursuing this nebulous and almost ridiculous concept that now we should start categorising sport within hormonal classifications. I mean, it's just absurd.
And as we know, Lucy, if people want to play in a mixed competition, there are plenty of mixed competitions out there where men and women play together, but we're talking about a competition that's supposed to be for women only. And now how disgraceful is this, Lucy Zelić? We've got women's teams who've said, all right, well, we won't play. We will forfeit because we don't want to go up against the Flying Bats.
It is disgraceful, because now what you're ultimately saying is, and as I pointed to before, women have been told, since the dawn of time that they'll never be in sport as good as the men, but now they're being told that once again, their views and their values and their feelings about these issues aren't important as the men. I mean, the thing that I've found to be the most frustrating element in all of this, Ben, is that we have the legislation that's readily available there. I've reached out to the Federal Minister for Sport and Aged Care, Annika Wells, to ask her view on this. She didn't want to be baited into any types of conversation around her views on what's occurring with Flying Bats FC, how she felt, which these are legitimate questions I ask, how she felt about biological males competing against biological women. Instead, all I got was a spokesperson who was a representative for the Australian Sports Commission pointing me to the 2019 guidelines, which, by the way, I'm actually not sure that a lot of organisations, notwithstanding Football Australia, have actually read this document. And I can understand on principle why a lot of it does matter and why a lot of it is legitimate, that we don't, we certainly shouldn't be excluding transgender people from administrative roles, from refereeing and things like that. But when it comes to the competitive playing field, we have an exemption that exists, right? And Sport Australia, who partnered with the Australian Human Rights Commission and the Coalition of Major Professional and Participation Sports, have already expressly applied, they've already said to everybody these legislations exist. The objective of the exemption is to restrict competitive sporting activity to people who can effectively compete with each other. This is intended to recognise that biological differences, this is in black and white in their document, that biological differences between men and women are relevant to competitive sporting activities. It can be understood to be ensuring a level playing field. It's there in black and white. Why aren't national sporting organisations right down, even to the community level? This protection and exemption does not have to be invoked at the elite sporting level. Right down to the community level, they could be enforcing this, and it would be a simple resolve of saying, we invoke this legislation, we are doing it on the balance of the fact that, that this does concern strength, physique, and also, part of me in the exemption, it also includes that on the grounds of sex, gender identity, or any sporting activity which is tantamount to the strength, stamina, or physique, that's relevant. They can invoke this. They have to prove it, and it's not difficult to prove. So why aren't they actually invoking this? I'm so confused.
Because unlike you, they are scared. You are outstanding. Can we talk again soon?
I'd love to talk again soon. I'm really passionate about this subject, as you can tell, but with good reason, because we need to protect women and girls in this space. We don't have enough politicians doing so. If anyone, before we go, is just as concerned about this as I am, as you're listening, please reach out to one of the very few senators that we have who are advocating for this in this space, and that's Senator Claire Chandler. I had the opportunity to interview her. She's just as passionate as all of us. Her door is always open to everybody that wants to discuss this. In 2019, she proposed a bill to protect women's sports single-sex categories. And she was basically told by all of the NSOs, go away, we're not interested, sport can handle this. Sport cannot handle this. They continue to play both sides of the fence, and we need legislative change, and we need it now.
You've got a powerful voice. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ben. Take
Lucy
care, mate.
Zelić, the highly respected soccer journalist. How amazing is Lucy? And I'm not surprised, having watched her in action over the years. I said earlier, if we're in a room full of listeners, they'd be giving her a standing ovation. And Maria says, I'm standing and clapping right now.